Hi, everyone. Welcome to Freebird Spirit YouTube channel. Thank you for swinging by and hanging out with Chris and I while we are in our series of Love is the Wisdom Behind Awakening discussion 29.
Whoa. And 2 and 9 is 11.
Is
Yeah.
11. So I'm excited about today, and where we will be guided to talk and where we will learn and grow and expand and awaken on this 11 show. So today we are talking about ego versus our higher self, or how ego affects us and challenges us and offers us opportunities of awakening and growth. And what does that look like in our daily lives? How does it present? How does our ego present? How do we learn how to respond rather than react in ego and all that? So that's what we're talking about today. And Chris, do you have a way of describing what the ego is?
No.
And there you have it. The teacher does not.
Oh, we're done.
We're all done.
We're all done. Oh, good. Okay. It's one of those things. I said to you, Eckhart Tolle does this thing, which I always pictured as, like on one of your shoulders is ego, and on the other shoulder is your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And so he often would talk about how the voice of the ego drowns out the voice of the soul. And if you really listen to yourself, you'll hear your soul speak, which probably isn't very different from when you say, I'm in the in-between, or I'm
Right.
listening to guides.
Very much. Mm-hmm.
So and so I used to listen to him a lot when I was doing a lot of commuting. And so I kept getting this image of this one sitting on my shoulder, that whenever I do something like, think about whether somebody looks good or behaves well, or what a jerk, that kind of language comes
Mm-hmm.
in my head. That sort of judgmental. I think, and now I'm saying that out loud, I think that when I would shift would be to say a lot of what we've been talking about. Is it sort of like you're looking at people saying, well, they're working out whatever they need to work out, which is a very different place than saying, what a jerk, well, that was really stupid. What instead of doing that,
Mm-hmm.
I had a colleague once several years ago who said, oh, why do you always give me the dummies to teach? And my whole body reacted. And it was, besides the obvious, it was the way in which she thought about students, right? But it felt so much about ego, but it was also my ego reaction, right? So I don't know. There's something about what's going on in this country right now that needs to happen, because the more we watch what's going on and the worse it gets, the more we realize the lessons we're supposed to draw from it. And that part's tough. That part's really hard, because the worse people get, it's like, okay, I learned that lesson. Well, maybe I didn't learn it all,
Right.
there's
Yeah.
more to learn. When someone walks into a mall and shoots people, or someone drives a Land Rover into a group of indigenous, or not immigrants, it's like, what? So, and then I think, well, maybe it's not me who's supposed to learn from these lessons, but I'm still reacting, right? I'm still in
Reacting.
ego.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not being particularly understanding about these two guys who did this. And maybe ego's not about it. Maybe spirit is not about understanding.
Well, when you look at that, when you look at it that way, when you look at like something that happens like that, and we automatically go straight into judgment of this person, like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, is evil and or hateful or must be a trumper, you know.
Mhm.
Now that word has become like a placement of judgment, and so if we, our goal is to align more with our higher self, and the challenge is our ego is so loud, like a gonging, it's like so loud, and it's easy to hear, it's easy to move in that, it's just so familiar and loud. Our higher self, whisper, a whisper.
I
It's,
know. And that's how I picture it too. I do. It's like, oh, there's my voice. There's my soul. And I picture it like wispy and quiet and full of love and gentle energy. And it's like, really?
and humor, actually.
Yeah. Yes. Very light.
Um, it's so funny because when you were just describing your higher self, they were showing me that, yeah, that's you're describing, but you left out this. You're actually really full of a lot of joy and humor and laugh a lot on that side.
Yeah.
So when you find yourself, Chris, in a place and you're laughing a lot and you're in that joy, that is really when you're connected into your higher self.
Well, okay, so we're done now. That was easy.
That's
Okay.
easy. Yay. So, but I believe, and we're all different. We literally, our higher selves are not the same. My higher self is not the same as your higher self. Right. And so we are collected, we are connected into collective consciousness, but there's purpose in our differences. And so I loved getting that little glimpse. That was really, really cool.
I'm getting tapped on my shoulder in a pretty rigorous way. Yeah, in an insistent way. And
Okay.
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams again.
Yeah,
Well, that's interesting. He's tapping on your shoulder because you have a familiarity with him.
I do.
Yes.
What do I have with him?
Well, let's find out.
Okay.
He's saying that you guys are cut from the same cloth. I don't know what that means. So you're very similar in a lot of ways. Um, the challenges that you came in with, very similar,
Hmm.
which is interesting. Um, Not in the way that you would uh, normally see. Like when he says similar, it wouldn't be something that you would see on the outside. Internal,
Right.
internal similarities. That's interesting. Um, yeah, ego. When he's saying when you are in ego, um, ego, it's a deadly place to live because it really steals life from you on every level.
Mhm.
You know, ego's meant to alert you, but you're not supposed but then to respond from that higher soul self. So the alerting part, and because ego is a part of our existence, and part of our, part of the whole here. And it's kind of an alert system, kind of like if you had an alarm in your home and it alerts you to movement. You
Yeah.
know, so if you have we just it just reminds me, he's showing me, we just put in these cat cameras everywhere, so when we're gone we can keep track
Uh-huh.
of Luna. And so and it literally alerts all the, it's alert, movement, you know, like all this stuff. And so that's what the ego is meant to do, is kind of alert you to something. But then the challenge again is to respond instead of react. Out of the alert, you alert, and then you have a choice to respond or react out of the ego. So you can respond out of the higher self or react out of the ego, he says. You know, thank you for coming back in to talk to us. That's really cool. Um, so again, he's also saying here that a lot of people get stuck in the ego because of fear, and we're seeing that play out right now on the planet. A
Yep.
lot of fear, a lot of reacting out of that fear place, and that is living. That is being, you know, you're kind of stuck in that ego space when you're living out of that fear. In fact, it's so loud. Fear is so loud that you really can't hear that higher self. So he's bringing this in because he's hoping that helps us understand when we're responding to what we're seeing play out globally. You know, the shootings, you know, all the things that you're like, what? Even road rage, or um, the out and outright racism that we see play out. If um, you know, I was you know, when I had my hairdresser was sharing that they, um, her husband is, is Mexican, she said, and he, you know, brown skin, and they moved to Colorado, and it's been his first time that he's experienced what she described as Karen's situations. And he's never had that ever in his whole life. They came from Southern California, where I'm from, and you wouldn't there. You would never experience that there. But here, um, he's experienced it several times, and they've only been here not even a year. And so those types of situations, those are all from that. So you're seeing this play out, and so you bringing us an understanding of those people who are reacting from this place of fear. They are in their ego, and because it's so loud, fear is such a loud one that it's they it's almost impossible to hear their higher self. But if we're aware, we have the opportunity to respond from that higher place. So how do we respond in that situation is the question. So you're always responding in a place of that all situations are temporary. Like it's not forever. This is never forever. So um, I'm trying to think of a situation would that would be a good story with this. So knowing that things, this is not for this is not forever. Always knowing that that um, that things are temporary, and that um, everything's always shifting. Everything's always like they're showing me the wheel of fortune. So everything's always turning and it's going to come right back up to the top of the wheel again. So understanding that this is temporary.
Well, it's hard to understand it when we're only here for a certain amount of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I've noticed a lot is that generations that are separated by like 20 years, there's a huge gap in their common knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can multiply that times many years, and we don't know what people in the 19th century or the 18th century said. We can go all the way back and say, oh my God, it was even worse then. So yeah,
Yes, yeah, that's true.
it's we almost, because of this dimension, that this dimension is really about, this third dimension is really about, what you can see, hear, touch, is all there is, when in fact there's a whole lot more than that. So when the topic comes up about ego and that we're living in fear, yeah, because we're living in the moment.
Oh, there you go.
Right, we're in the moment. We're
That
not
makes sense to that temporary,
well,
that
words
moment.
words like collective and words like continuum and words like, universe and eternity and all of that defy your understanding of the third dimension. They sort of throw it out the window, and what's what I think he said about fear is really important, because what we're being bombarded with right now are efforts to create fear, destruction, devastation,
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over and over again in every way possible. So, so I'll give you an example, because I was railing about this a couple of days ago. All of these people who are trying to create these laws that restrict women's bodies and lives and so on, and you start to think about, okay, so abortion's not really about abortion. It's really about babies and women's bodies and health and all of that. And then, sorry, got distracted. It occurred to me that there would be a great op-ed to write. Two of them, I came up with two of them, and both of them are about ego. The first one was an op-ed piece about all the laws that could be created by women legislators to restrict men's behavior,
Ooh,
because pregnancy, abortion, marriage, divorce, all of that have men in them, but the only laws that are being created, that they're trying to create, are targeting women.
are targeting women. Yes, even
So
the
you wear that shirt called "Regulate Dick,"
yeah.
it's like, let's take this to its specific level.
Mm-hmm.
If you impregnate somebody, then that person is owed damages, and the fetus automatically gets all your belongings. I mean, there's
Right.
ways to start thinking about that, where she's not having babies in a vacuum. She's not impregnated in a vacuum. I mean, she's not doing it to herself. So why are we focusing that way? What was the other one I came up with? Oh, yes. Um, the Trump rule book for sports. You ready?
Yes.
When your team loses, and this is like little league and high school,
Yeah.
your team loses, you say, we didn't lose, it was the umpire or the referee's fault.
Oh, that happens already.
Right?
People.
Right. And you just lie. You just keep saying, no, I won. I did win. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Here
Yeah.
are the rules. And so you start to change all of the terms for manners, what good behavior, the kinds of words you can say in public, not telling the truth ever. And so it's
Right.
humor. Now,
Right.
Is that ego?
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, because they're
Yeah.
the ego in protection. Um,
And Robin Williams was good at that stuff.
oh, that's that. I was kind of asking him how he was able to, how he figured out the ego and was able to respond from that other space. And he said he had the opportunity to see, to study and bring humor in, but the human experience. And in doing so, it was almost, not a full on conscious choice. It was later. He did understand a lot of this later in his life in regards to the soul, and because he was a seeker, like he was a seeker like that. Um, but yeah, he had a unique opportunity to be able to study human nature and be able to he learned how to respond and from that higher self to life and the experiences. Um, and also stepping out of um, limited thoughts. When you're in ego, you're in that box. We're bringing the box back in. Ego is boxed in. It's
Love
very,
boxes. Yeah.
very limited thinking, not wanting to think outside the box. This is safe, and they stay in
I
that
think it's
limited.
safe. You
They
think it's safe. It's not necessarily safe.
right. No, no, exactly. But so, and if you're in your higher self, of course, that's bringing in unlimited thinking. Like you're just expansion. So, we talk about love is the wisdom behind awakening, and asking everyone just step into that energy of love, and that's ultimately having you step into that unlimited thinking space and opening that up. Um, and so that gets you to your higher self there. Um, what else here? Another thing with the ego is, it's all about um, you're in this world that you feel out of control. So there's fear. So you're living in that noise of fear and responding, reacting, I'm sorry, to everything through fear. And so what do you do in your ego is you try to create safety for yourself, however that's going to look, and you are going to fight tooth and nail for it to the end, creating that safe space for you, um, and um, um, and uh, trying to find comfort any way you can, um, control your environment any way you can, and so you see that playing out in the world right now.
It seems like that's one of the main draws for religions
Yes,
because I've got it.
100%.
I've packaged it all up into a book and into a set of rules. And when people vary from those conditions, then I get to slam the door and I get to invoke the rules and I get to punish them or call them sinners
Mm-hmm.
or tell them to repent or what, and then the people who, it's the everyday people, it's not even the clergy, it's the everyday people who will say, oh, Debbie, how could you be like that? And it hurts your heart because typically that happens between two people who are connected to each other,
Right.
right? So it's sort of like heart enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to sort of come out of that in a way where you're able to say, I'm just being me. I think I wrote to you this morning because I read an article in the Washington Post today about someone who wrote about the science of the brain and sex.
You didn't send me that one. Mm-mm.
I think I did. Biological sex. You might not have had a chance to look at it.
No, you sent me a different one.
This one was this one was what they're talking about. I'm not.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, that's right.
Well, it's long, so I didn't know if you had a chance to read it, but it was an op-ed piece, and they were talking about the science of the brain. And the thing that struck me the most, you know how Lady Gaga did that song "Born This Way,"
Oh
and
yeah.
when she did that song, it became an anthem, right? And it was an anthem for the gay rights movement. Um, and I remember saying to my mother at one point, "Mom, God doesn't make mistakes. You know, people are people. You know." And of course, everybody loves to argue that point. But when she wrote this op-ed piece, I couldn't help but sit there and say, what is going on with these politicians about the trans stuff? Like they somehow have the inside track about what this is, and they're believing that they're sort of blessed and doing the work of religion, I think, or some false pride
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, they're doing the work of God. Mm-hmm.
And they're really striking at people's fear,
Mm-hmm.
getting a population they perceive as weak and unable to fight back, and who's
Mm-hmm.
going to disagree with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I get caught in all this stuff, like what you were talking about when you talk about boxes. And I start to think, am I caught in ego again? Am I afraid again? I mean, I've seen this so many times that, yeah, I'm afraid for the people who haven't had those experiences yet. And you know, they also said that the rate of teen suicide among gay kids has gone up to 42%.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and I sit there and I say to myself, all right, so if I'm going to say that these are lessons that we're supposed to wake up through,
Mm-hmm.
I find it really confusing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's we want to hold on to those boxes and that sense of that false consciousness about comfort and be in one of those boxes because we think it's going to protect us. But what she said in this article was that in the science, the brain science, what they found is that people who say they feel like the another sex actually have different brain chemicals. They
Oh
don't have
yeah, right.
it.
Yeah, I did read the article. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I just didn't remember what it was called. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you remember something.
You know, I do feel that we are in here having this experience, human experience. We come down here, have this human experience. And a lot of people talk about learning lessons and doing this, and we have to go through this and go through that to really step into our awakening and remember who we are, that kind of thing. I feel like that's frustrating for some people. I'm frustrated by that, because it's like, um, so what I was understanding when you were talking was it's more of, you know, we're in this constant flux of expansion. It's here. It's constantly here. And if we are open to that expansion that's happening right here and we're like, okay, I want to be a part of this expansion, when we just move right over into it. um you know, things, that abundance comes in, um that infinite energy of and like all that stuff comes in awareness that we are living in this constant awakening, a constant awareness, uh, expansion. That's the word. And um, if we are in our ego space, that's where we we bounce up against that, right? And we live in the fear, and we do all that. And depending on how fast we kind of release, um, our childhood traumas and that first part of growth, and because again, as your body, mind, body, and spirit, mind and body are growing and becoming, um, and you know, however it's experiencing, it all kind of plays out. I did all that. I'm trying to say is, I'm not sure it's just about learning lessons. You're here to learn lessons. I'm not sure about that. I think we're here to remember that we're part of this expansion, this continual expansion. We're all part of the whole network of it. And once we really remember it, and I lean in because they're right here, into that expansion and being a part of that instead of in resistance to that. And we
Well,
have free
you know,
will, and we have choices to make while we're here. We're here to experience and have free will, and live out free. Well, we're always in free will. Even on the other side, you're free will. But in this realm, in that free will, to choose to continue to choose to be in fear and create this yourself, you can do that. That's fine. Or you can really step into remembering who you are in your higher self, and step into that expansion and in awareness. So you're just going with that flow, right? You're just moving along with that expansion instead of trying to, go and push the river, like I used to say, go against the river of it. Did any of that make sense?
of course it makes sense. No, you doubt it. It always makes sense. No, these are not. I think what I rail against so much is these things should make sense. It should be easy.
Right.
But we make things so complicated. We say, "Oh, we're here to learn lessons." Well, wait a minute. I didn't need that lesson. I already learned that lesson. What are you talking about?
Right.
He just killed 9 people. That's not a lesson I need to learn. So there's, it's somehow that's just too easy to say. And I think you're right that it's much more complicated than that. But I
Yeah.
think the work is the work of free will. But the work of free will doesn't mean you just go, helter skelter, doing whatever you feel like.
Yeah.
Free will is your vehicle to learn what you came into this life to learn. Remembering that you have a soul contract, and it may include doing some hideous things here. But I think that's where I've been lately is watching other people do harm and say, wow, that was quite a soul contract. I wonder what you were supposed to do. I wonder
Mm.
what these people were supposed to get from this. And the word that kept coming up about was about resistance. That the more we resist, the more we resist the work of spirit and soul, the more those things are going to happen.
Mm.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but
Um, I just know that resistance doesn't help, does it?
No, no.
Resistance always brings in that ego.
Yeah, and I think when you talked about expansion, I think a lot of that's really what this is. You know, this planet um, has gone through numerous episodes of expansion where there's been all sorts of upheaval, all sorts of damage that's been done. But they've all sort of been a little bit different than the previous ones. And I've been doing this ancestry stuff, and it's really your fault.
Thank you.
Yeah, because you brought up the Irish stuff. I finally thought, I should go look. And it turns out I'm 67% Scottish, and I had no earthly idea. But the worst part of it is my father's side, we were always told he was, my mother married below her station, which was not true. That I traced that side back to the 1100s. They were descended from the Normans who conquered the English, and
Wow.
they were part of the royal lineage all the way down.
Wow.
They migrated here and they became dirt farmers. But but I'm reading this stuff just at the time when the coronation's going on, going, what? And then some people have actually put their stories together. And so here, being the history buff, I'm sitting here reading this history going, oh my God, these people were all Donald Trump. They're all horrible people. They're horrible. They're ripping other people off. Henry VIII beheaded one of them. I'm sitting there going, what? What is this? And then realizing, oh, this isn't my family. They're not my family. Somebody else said they were my family, but my family is on the other side. So I started sitting here going, oh, no, I didn't come from them. It came from somewhere else. But, and that stuff is always interesting to me, the stuff about, reincarnation, but looking at the lessons, just when you start to think about these lessons,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and what they did and what they still do.
So, in keeping to what you're talking about, you chose to come in on that line, on that genetic line or whatever,
Well,
and
thanks a lot.
and but to create positive change, to right the wrongs of history on that genetic line, and you have done that. You've done that, and you did what you came to do in regards to that genetic line. So that, I feel like, part of, I think that's really cool to learn that history on the genetic line that you chose to come in on this time around, and what you did to make positive change to it.
I hear you.
She hears me, you guys. She hears me.
I hear you. Isn't that one of those famous psychology lines?
I hear you.
I hear you. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now, but that's good. That's good because you are choosing not to be a victim of your circumstance.
Hmm.
And that is truly ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you are in your higher self. You're creating your own reality in regards to this. So you're doing good.
You wish you're creating your own reality. Yeah.
But truly, if you if you're fully aligned with your higher self, you literally know that you are creating your reality. You're creating your story. You often hear me say, hey, you're in charge of this next chapter. What do you want it to look like?
Right.
Are you going to pull in your victim circumstance from the first few chapters of your life and put it in and keep it going in this next chapter? You're going to leave that victim of your
Right.
circumstance back then.
Well, and you've mentioned that the victim stuff a lot.
But that's ego.
But I think that is ego. It is ego. And I guess
If
I'm
you
struggling.
remain a victim of your circumstance, that is pure ego, and that's where you build up, start building those walls of protection, and trying to create, and stay within that boxed thinking and place. And if you live out that victim, if you continue to be that victim of your stances, and that fear-based place, that's ego.
So if you're not an ego, what are you?
If you're not in ego, what are you? You are, you are abundance. You are, harmony. You are love. Do you like how YMCA?
Oh God, it's raining men. Hallelujah.
So,
this conversation is good in the sense that we don't talk about these things much, but it's also really not clear. I don't have an easy way through this.
no, but being aware.
Yeah.
And so know that when you're reacting to a situation, that's coming from your ego. If you're responding more because you've stopped and listened to the whisper.
But you know what I've been doing a lot for a while now? When I find myself in ego, which is usually when I'm being critical, like,
yeah,
you left the damn cupboard door open again. It's like, I the little voice in my head says, "What would love do? What would love do?" And then I shift and I get away from that place. And of course, it's really easy. When you've got a cancer diagnosis, it's really easy to be a victim. Why me?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's huge. That's staying in that victim.
Yeah.
Other things to watch out for, is where you're the fear of change. Are you fearful of things, of expansion, of change?
Depends on what the change brings.
Mm-hmm.
The change for me brought a wheelchair, one of the pieces, right? And I fought that like crazy. And this past week, I drove the wheelchair out of the house, and I went out in the backyard, went around, looked at the gardens, and ran into some neighbors, and I had a great time.
You ran into neighbors? You be careful on that thing.
I know. Oh, that joystick's very touchy. But I did. I made this 32-foot ramp. I go down the ramp and I get out there and I'm like, I'm outside. I was so happy. You would think that nothing had happened.
Thank you. So let's talk about this for a minute, Chris, since you brought it up. Thank you very much. It's going to be a good example for everyone. What happened in the time of being resistant to this change? What happened to you?
Which part of the change?
Right. So you were resistant to change. And so you're resistant to this, looking at getting this resistant to this happening. You had some falls.
Yeah, you think? Yeah.
So no, I mean, I'm not trying to be, but this is a good example for us when things are shifting and changing, whether we feel it's good or bad. Of course, we don't want to give up our mobility, right? And so we're resistant to that. So we're gonna stay away from that wheelchair as long as possible. Or let's say glasses. If I resist wearing glasses and I can resist and I can sit here and I can be like this and I can be like, oh, okay. Yeah, I see. You know what I mean? And then what I would give myself is severe headaches. I would
Mm.
run into walls. I would fall downstairs. I would do all these things because I'm resisting this change that's
Your,
happening
your
automatically.
glasses are your wheelchair.
Yes. Yes. So
I,
then,
on one level, this has all been progressive. And so it's been how hard do you have to work, how hard do you have to fight to not have it be worse, right? So you start doing the incremental things. You start, having your eye exams and,
right.
maybe a little tweak here or a little tweak there. And, you get yourself through that. And then you say, okay, I did that. Now maybe I can stay here. And then something else happens and then you can't stay there. And so it's incremental, right? And each time the challenge, yeah, you're right. It was good to talk about this. Each time the challenge is what should my, I don't even know what to say, what to call it. It's not ego. What should my position be? What should my sense of self be? And sense of self is probably ego too, but how do you cope? It's a daily coping.
It is.
And so, moving the walker around the house is tiring. Everything's slow. I can't do anything fast. And I used to be very fast.
Mm-hmm.
There's the memory of what it was, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is longer. So you have to let that go. So there's some grief work in there. And then you have to get past that. And then, oh, here's another episode, so you go through that. But I think all the way along with every incremental change, once I get through that first bump, I didn't spend my time feeling sorry for myself.
Okay.
I
Beautiful.
I started saying, okay, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to get to the next level? And also being mindful of you know, people are stepping up and taking care of you,
Mm.
whether they're hired to do that or they want to do that,
Yeah, exactly.
to be aware of them, to live in that
Mhm.
spirit of um, a shared experience and a common caring of each other,
Mhm.
where and then gratitude, honest to God. I mean, every
Gratitude is huge. Hmm.
out of my mouth is thank you, so, it's not an accident that I have flowers on my table. It's not an accident that the chair's here, and that the ramp is here. That a lot of people made all this happen. So when I get out there, I'm hugging everybody, I'm saying hi. And somebody said, "Wow, how fast is that thing going?" I'm, well, let me show you. I'll go down the driveway, and I'm out in the backyard, and the dog's laying down next to me, and I'm like, okay, we made it this far, now what? And then somebody will show up and they'll say, you know what you should do. And then my ego comes straight out of my mouth.
Right.
Don't
Okay.
tell me what I should do. Yeah. Don't do that. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just,
But
that's just an
it's a
that's not.
it's a beautiful metaphor for us, is what I'm saying. The reason I brought it in, well, you brought it up, and I thought this is a perfect metaphor
Mm,
of progress forward is always happening. We're always we're always progressing, right? Every day we're progressing. We're a day older every day. So we're progressing every day, right? So I don't know if that's the right word. Progressing, we're there's a movement. We're always progressing towards going home, right? Or in day or whatever. We're always
getting
getting,
closer to going home. Yes.
yeah. So every day. We can't stop that. We can't stop that time clock here.
We think we can.
But we think we can. And so we're like, okay, what can we do to stop this time clock? And we have commercials. I'm inundated with commercials on how I can stop the progress of time on my face. Right? And your body and everything. You're constantly, you can see the ego coming through of how you can push back the clock of time. And I'm not saying, not to do, do what you want to do as far as, but here's the deal. There's a point in time that, because um, part of that grabbing onto that piece of, okay, let's go with the stopping the progressive time on your face, using all your creams and all, do that. But when it becomes where it has produced fear and pushback, and it's really pushing on those ego parts, that's when you keep pushing back, and there becomes that struggle, that angst, and that fear of, and all the things that go along with aging up. How different would this time in your life, and experiencing the aging up process, and surrendering, like, Chris just shared part of her story of her you're having to surrender, right, Chris? And on a daily, like, what's next? You know what I mean? Like, now, we all are doing that, because every day is a progressive day towards, right? Or that, we get a day older every day, right? We can't stop that time clock. So are we going to push back on it, or are we going to jump on and go, dude, this is so cool. I am one day older, and this is what I have. And what am I going to do with today? How can I step in today grateful to have this day, in gratitude, and and uh, um, and bring in expansion today? How can I do that today in my life? How can I exude joy today? How can I exude gratitude, and not allow this beast of ego to steal from, and try to keep me in this box of, not being satisfied with how I'm progressing, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You say that every time.
I know, because I'm not always all the way here when I'm talking. So,
You're more than you think you are. Yeah.
oh,
Um, the fear piece is what you really have to wrestle to the ground. It's a constant, it's constant. I'm always one wobble away from a crisis. Literally.
exactly. No, literally. I mean,
One
we know
one wobble away from a
you're
crisis.
wearing a brace right now.
Yeah, that's right. I am. It's almost June 1st when it comes off. But yeah, it and you say to yourself, I said to myself when this happened, I don't want to go back in the hospital. I don't want to go back in the hospital. Don't want to go back. And I keep saying that, and then I go, and then people are just so freaking nice. I mean, I put out a group text saying they're admitting me to the hospital. They all showed up. They're digging snow out of the sidewalk. They're cleaning the house. Somebody's bringing her bag in so she can stay with the dog. And I get in the hospital, and they're phenomenal. This man is my nurse, and he's like, "Don't worry, honey. I'll keep your integrity, and I'm not going to let anybody hurt you." Right? You don't. I don't. These are. It's almost like, I don't know. I think part of the piece about doing the work of separating the ego and the soul apart is that when that's happening, if you stay over here with the soul part, you see them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see you. You see them.
them. Mm-hmm.
You don't see what your body's doing. You see what they're trying to do to help.
Mm-hmm.
How kind they're being, what kind of life they're having. You know, they want to talk. They want to, there's it's if I have anything to take away from all of this, it's all of those relationships. And I go in to see the doctor, and they're coming out and hugging me, putting their
Mm.
arms around me while I'm having an internal exam. I'm going, what? We love you, and said, it's that is what you can create.
Yeah.
And if you stay in ego and in victim, you won't see what's right in front of you. You won't see the love and the goodness that's around you, that can be around you. And, I get mocked all the time because people say, if I just mention something, you buy it for me. It's like, well, yeah, because that feels good. I mean, you can go out and you can go to a rock concert. I can't. So I can buy you a book. It's like,
Which I love way better than a rock concert, just
that's why you can still have hearing. And
yes.
I'm still wearing hearing aids, yes. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so this is a super important conversation. That is it's a continual conversation, you guys, as we learn about truly the ego and our higher selves, and a little bit different for everybody. But really, the key takeaway here is looking at anything that keeps you that is fear based, um, and also uh, keeps you in a small minded. I don't want to say small mind, but in a small space of thinking where you're thinking about something is limited. So it only is this way. That's an example of a limited. You have to believe this way or no way. You know what I mean? So that would be limited. So fear and limited thinking. So just be aware of those areas in our own lives. Where am I limited thinking? Where am I fear based? We all have these places that will continue to kind of uh, come in that way. Um, and but some things um, that uh, that can offer us to recognize that we're more aligned into our higher self thinking is coming a little bit what you were saying as far as coming from a place of gratitude, um, coming from that place of love, um, uh, embracing where you can embrace change. You see change and you're able to embrace that. Um, what else? Forgiveness is a big piece here where you can live in that space of forgiveness, accepting people where they're at and understanding that they are in their own story, like Chris brought up. Um, you want others to succeed. You're not in competition there. So there's some stuff there. Um, and that you want to continuously learn. Now, this is so interesting because that's a waking up wanting to learn. What can I learn today? What can I expand? So again, it's all about that expansion, being willing to expand. We are expanding. Are you willing to go with that flow, right? And always come from a place of understanding and moving from um, that we are in transformation, always in a place of transformation. I think
The word that keeps coming to mind when you're talking about this is the word control. That the fear stuff, the more
Mm-hmm.
we watch fear, the more we encounter fear, the more we want to control. And so part of what we're talking about is that you have to really find a way to sort of make sense of the fear and
Mm-hmm.
talk to the fear and say, I know you're here to teach me something. I'm going to try and learn it. I'm going to try and figure it out.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'm going to use these other tools, which are I'm going to be grateful for the people who are around me. I'm going to be paying attention to other people. I'm going to be doing what what's really it
What?
really is about loving. It's really,
Yes.
I don't want it to sound trite, but it really is. It's about, reaching and getting over yourself. That's another piece of ego. Getting over yourself, where you pick up the phone and say, I really need some help. Could you help me? That's one of the hardest things ever. So it's really about, and so the fear stuff leads, and I'm answering my own question. The fear stuff leads to controlling behavior. And so these politicians are so freaking afraid
Yeah.
they're not going to get, or they're going to get caught doing the things they're doing, or they're going to not get reelected.
They're going to
That,
lose their control is what they're going to
well, if we
lose
can
their,
keep women in their place, then maybe I can keep this job, or
yeah.
maybe I can get this money. So, it's that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, yeah,
So
ego.
all I can, and I'm going to end with this and encourage everyone to really um, um, recognize their alignment with their soul self. Um, all I can say is if you're in a rushing river and you're in your boat, it's much easier just to go with the flow than it is to try to swim up, to try to get your boat upstream. So just take a look at that. You choose, you have free will to choose if you want to sit there and try to get upstream on things or just kind of allow the boat to take you. Because
You might get all wet, but it'll still be fun.
the universe will catch you. The universe will catch you, I promise. So, with that, you guys, thanks for hanging out today in this discussion of ego and higher self. And we bless you with that. And Chris, thank you so much again for this amazing discussion. And we look forward to seeing you all next time. Blessings.
Peace out, everybody.